Welcome to all the Canadians on the MVP Show. In this podcast series, I hope to go beneath the surface and understand the motivations, contributions in life of MVPs and the role they play in the community to enable you, the listener, to make an informed choice about what's involved in joining this worldwide family. The format for the show is that of a fireside chat. For full show notes, please visit nz365guy.com/33. Now, on with the show. Hey everybody, I'm just here with Nick, hanging out for the week in Redmond. We're both doing a little project for Microsoft, and we thought we'd catch up and record a little podcast to understand how Nick kind of got involved with the MVP program and a bit of background. So, if you're considering joining this team of professionals that like to give to the community around the world, perhaps you'll pick up something from Nick's journey that might resonate with you. So, Nick, why don't you go ahead and kind of give us the rundown, your background, and what do you do when you're not doing dynamics type things?
Oh, for sure. Okay, so I guess my background is going way back to I grew up on a farm in southwestern Ontario in Canada, and that was on a dairy farm. But we also had pigs and beef, cattle, and a bunch of different things. It came down to when I was a teenager, I got my first computer, which was a Commodore 64, and it's kind of this will come back later, but what I loved about the Commodore 64 is I turned it on, and immediately on the screen would be a flashing cursor with the word ready. So you're just ready to start doing a bunch of neat stuff. So that's why my Twitter handle is ReadyXRM. So that's where the Ready came from. I ran a business a few years ago that was Ready Business Management Systems. So that's where the origin of that. My dad offered me when I was 18, he said, if you want, would you like to stay and take over the farm? And the dairy farm, it's a 7-day a week, twice a day milking cows. So I pondered that decision for, I think, half a second when I said, thanks, Dad, but I think I'm going to move on to other things and get into technology. So I went to school. I trained as an electronics engineer and technologist, which was half hardware-based, half software-based. I preferred the software. It was much more results-driven. You could fix a line of code. You could do some development. You have something up and running pretty quick. Whereas doing hardware, you're wire wrapping chips. You're doing a big, intricate timing diagrams, logic analyzers, things like that. So I thought it's fun, but being a slightly impatient person, that's why I got into the software side of things. So graduated, became a developer, developed a database application for material safety data sheets. Moved on into a system administrator role a few years later. The company I was working for, they were using a system called Great Plains, which, accounting, ERP system. I learned that inside out and sideways, became a dexterity programmer. And then from there, moved on got into consulting, was recruited by a consulting company, really enjoyed it. I became a technical consultant, and basically my job was, we always used to tell people we did everything for Great Plains up into the login prompt. So a lot of the installation, setup, going around to all the workstations, installing, because it was a client server application, doing data migrations into the Great Plains using Integration Manager. Picked up a lot of great information there, but of course, as things evolved, I wanted to get a little bit more modern technology. Did a little bit of work with an application called Great Plains Front Office, which was actually a rebranded Siebel mid-market as a CRM system. So that's sort of my entry into CRM. Found that it was pretty tricky, pretty difficult to work with. User adoption at the company I was working at was pretty bad. When I was, in those days when you did an update, adding a new field or a new form or kind of, new flow or something like that, you'd physically have to go around and install that patch to each workstation. And I realized my efforts were kind of fruitless when I went to install it on one gentleman's workstation. And he said, yeah, you can go ahead and install it. He was a sales guy. But I use Excel and I use Outlook, and I don't even launch Siebel. It's just there. I don't even care. So I realized it's like, okay, this is, for somebody that's results driven as myself, it's like I worked pretty hard at trying to fit some of this together, make it work for you guys. And at the same time, a friend of mine, he was working for a Microsoft partner, and he said, hey, I got this new the beta copy of this new program that Microsoft is putting together. It's called Microsoft Business Solutions CRM. So he gave me the CDs, and I installed them on a virtual machine, and it was like, wow, this is really cool. This was CRM 1 and easy to navigate. You could, add fields to the forms. Up to a certain extent, you'd run out of room pretty quick. I remember a few times on the contact entity, you ran out of room. You built crystal reports, and the extensions where it's pretty brutal. There's a lot of XML based type of development you needed to do to get it to do things. So, I worked for a consulting company, a few places. We implemented CRM internally. I demoed CRM version 1 a lot, and a lot of people liked. It actually demoed very well. A lot of the feedback we got, yeah, this is great, but this is a version 1 Microsoft product. We're not interested. When version 2 comes out, give us a call back. So I did work on a couple implementations for, version 1 and 1.2. And 1.2, if you recall, maybe you don't, but it was pretty much the same as version 1, a few little minor enhancements. So we waited this was 2003 when CRM 1 came out. CRM version 3 launched, I believe, it was December 2005, if I remember correctly. So, we talk about the release cadence of Dynamics 365 today being every 6 months, there's a new release coming out. And even then, we as MVPs become very impatient waiting for that next release. And I'm always kind of, okay, guys, in the old days, we waited 3 years, and we didn't even, I did see some previews of version 3, but even at that time, it's like, okay, it's coming. The fact that when version 3 came out, we were able to create entities. We couldn't do that before. We could create relationships between entities, but we could only create one relationship, and one already existed. We couldn't create multiple. And the workflow engine, I think we were actually chatting offline the other day about this. The workflow engine, you actually had to log into the server to build workflows, and a lot of crazy stuff like that, where today we would just, we laugh at it, but that was just the way it was at the time. So it was around that time I started my own company. I went off on my own as an independent consultant. Over the years, we had grown to, 4 or 5 people. We never were huge. We did a lot of work as subcontractors for other partners, initially partners that were, I had a lot of connections in the Great Plains world that, they were implementing Great Plains, but they had a CRM job or an interest in CRM. So I did a lot of those. And then eventually, CRM 2011, 2013. And at that time, I I'm more of a technical hands-on person, and the business, we had too much work to do. So at that time, we joined, me and my team, we joined BDO Canada, and did some more implementations. I got heavily into portals, which I find really cool, a little fascinating. I think there's still a lot of potential there on the portal side. And just recently, about a month ago, I once again struck off on my own, and I'm working on a project now for an organization that's heavily in the mining industry and the human resources there, but they're using CRM I should say Dynamics 365 for a lot of amazing stuff for, managing their certification and training process. There's a portal involved as well. So I'm really, helping them with their digital transformation to kind of take that to the next level. And, splitting my time with that and ramping up to become a trainer in Dynamics 365 and taking my years of experience and knowledge and that aspects of it, and kind of, I'd say training the next generation of Dynamics 365 superstars.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good and incredible. As in the parallels between my background, I was brought up on a dairy farm, same deal, and as you know, with similar ages. I love that you have such detail or memory, if you like, of the different versions. It all just blurs into one for me. Yeah. So
Well, there's a
was
lot of
that?
times where I think when version 3 came out, my tagline was, "I no longer have to apologize for the software."
Yeah, it was a big jump, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So you're saying you started your own company. You kind of went through a process of merging in with BDO, and then now you've gone out on your own again, and you're starting to kind of give back more to the community. You're doing more training. Tell me about becoming an MVP and kind of what you see your responsibility is as an MVP.
Well, my MVP journey goes. I think I was first made aware of the MVP program in, I think, 2006 at, I believe, Tech Ed in, I believe it was Orlando, Florida. And at that time, CRM was like not barely a blip on the map of Microsoft. Not many people knew about it. And there was a booth at Tech Ed about the MVP program and, how you could become an MVP and things like that. And I was talking to them and I said, is there such a thing as a CRM MVP? And they kind of looked at me funny. They're going, what's CRM? So after I explained it, they said, well, if it's a Microsoft product, probably. So I kept that in the back of my mind, and running a business and working on projects, it really, I wrote maybe one blog here or there, got on the forums and answered a few questions. But of course, day in and day out, kind of focusing on my day job, and began to all of a sudden see CRM specific blogs kind of begin to pop up. There was the gentleman, Michael Holm from Germany, who I think we all remember as Stunware. He had a fantastic blog. That was my go-to in terms of doing JavaScript and things like that. Excuse me. And then a few others as well. Matt Whitman, Shan MacArthur, Larry Lentz. They, was beginning to see these MVPs and what they're doing with CRM. And it made me feel good because I realized, hey, I'm not the only one in the world doing this, although sometimes it kind of felt like it. And, again, seeing what they did and then seeing what, all the MVPs did in the community and realized, wow, that's a lot of work. And a funny story, when I was running my business, and of course, running a business, you're running around, you're doing 1,000 different things every day. And I believe it was 2013 at the Worldwide Partner Conference in Toronto, at one of the vendor parties. And to this day, I'm not sure who it was, but it was an MVP there. And he said he was a Dynamics CRM MVP. And it wasn't you, Mark, because I would have remembered the accent. But he introduced himself as a Microsoft CRM MVP. And I said, wow, it must be great to have all this time on your hands. And he was fairly offended by that. But we had a good conversation. He went on to say, yeah, there is some effort, but you realize a lot of the work you're probably already doing by, documenting some of your processes and resolving problems. It's just a matter of you putting it on a blog or speaking about it at an event, going on the forums and helping people out, those kind of activities. And so it definitely kept it at the end of my mind. And then when I was part of BDO a couple of years ago, I thought, okay, I had set myself a couple of goals for the year. I said, okay, well, I do want to become an MVP. And I also had some powerlifting goals, which I'll talk about maybe in a little bit. So I kind of dove in and started blogging a lot more. I started spending a lot more time on the community forums, also on the CRM UG forums as well, answering questions, and began to kind of put my name in to speak at events. So BDO had a customer event. I spoke at a couple sessions there, particularly on portals. I began to write a lot of blogs on portals because at the time, beyond ADX Studio, there really wasn't much information out there on portals. And I found of the stuff that I learned and trying to help others on my team learn, I took that information and posted a bunch of blogs. It was on the BDO IT Solutions website, and they're still there, and it was still somewhat relevant. And I actually self-nominated, although I suspect I got some help along the way to kind of move me along. The Canadian community manager at the time, Simran Chaudhry, who recently left the position. He was awesome. Yeah, Sim is a great guy. We still keep in touch today. He immediately emailed me. He said, I saw your application. This is great. I see that you're on the forums, you're doing blogging. I suggest you move your blog over to a personal blog so we don't have that. I believe there's sort of that feeling of, sort of company endorsements and things like that. So I did that, started blogging like a madman. I continued to do some speaking engagements. I spoke at Extreme 365, spoke at CRMUG Summit, did some webinars and that kind of thing. And it was a blast. I love doing it. My blog, I tried to do it once a week, although it's usually turns out like once every 2 weeks or sometimes a little bit more. Speaking at events is great. You get to meet the people and you're to see the people when you're helping out, you're presenting something. To me, I get a thrill when I put a slide up and everybody's got their camera phones out and or camera phones. How old am I? Their phones out and, snapping a picture of a slide. And I'm like, well, the deck will be available, but still just to see people are interested in what you're presenting, is really cool. And then this is the funny part. It was April 1st, 2017. It was a Saturday. I get up and, I kind of glance at my phone, glance at my email, but my family was still asleep. And there was an email saying, congratulations, you are now a Microsoft MVP. And I'm like, cool. And I'm like, oh, it's April 1st. Which one of my buddies, pulled this prank or spoofed the email, right? I'm like, and then I kind of read through and it's like, no, this is legit. So I was pretty pumped about it and got to meet, basically then I got, more involved in the community. And I had known a few people before, but then got to interact with them more at the CMUG Summit and Extreme. And of course the MVP Summit here in Seattle last March, and realized this community kind of goes beyond a club. There's people that not only were helping the community, and we get I think we all get something pretty big out of that, but also helping each other out. Definitely on stuff around Dynamics 365 and development, or there's problems, there's troubleshooting. But I also have a feeling that if I had a flat tire on the side of the road, I could call up any of the MVPs, that were close by and say, guys, I'm stuck on the side of the road, and everybody would become rushing out. And you know what? I'd do the same for any of those guys as well.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a bit about the benefits you kind of feel that you get from your close engagement with Microsoft.
Definitely the learning. To me, I find definitely an IT career, but also sort of my personality. I find I need to keep me excited. It's always learning new things. And with the MVP program, a couple things. You get the program group interaction calls, which, you get the calls where they're showing the new software or what's coming on the roadmap. And of course, you have to keep that under wraps, which is the hardest part, right? It's like I know something you don't know, and you're kind of like, oh, I wish I could tell you, but I can't, and I don't, because there's obviously the NDA and there's strategic regions for that. But to me, to get that head start on just from the learning perspective, I think that puts me in a good position to share with the community, because we've had time to digest this information before it becomes public knowledge. And as someone who may not, you got to realize at the end of the day for us, Dynamics 365, of course, it's our job, and being the MVP, it's a big thing, but it's also essentially it's a hobby for us, because we're willing to put in that extra thing, and we get the benefits that you would of any other hobby. To be able to have that information ahead of time, we can share that with someone who's effectively Dynamics 365 is not their hobby, but it's part of their job. And we can help them out become effective by sharing that information. We've been able to digest, we've been able to question, we've been able to provide feedback from the field to Microsoft that, they work in their, I quote unquote, their pristine lab clean environments. We're down in the ditches. So we see the nitty gritty of what's going on, and, to kind of put that together and come out with a great product. But for example, I always felt that the XRM story was always kind of lacking in the Microsoft world. They were focused on, the sales, service, and marketing. And I brought that up. There was a partner panel, And I said, guys, you keep talking about the sales module and the service, the marketing. What, you're missing out, because from my background, what I didn't mention is probably about 80 to 90% of my projects I would consider XRM based. We didn't, I've done a few sales and service, but I've used CRM to, help not-for-profits, gauge their government contributions. I've worked with an auction house for classic cars using CRM to manage all that, reinsurance companies. The list goes on, membership organizations that, don't fit that model. So I remember we were at this panel saying, guys, you're sitting on this application development platform, yet you're not promoting it as such. Like, it's like, and then they all kind of looked at each other kind of funny. And then they said, you're going to be pleasantly surprised what's coming up. And it's almost like they kind of mentioned, what's coming up with our Power App story and things like that. So then it kind of clicked, and it's like, I had played with the Power Apps, which we call the Canvas-based apps, and at that time was fairly limited, and it was like a public preview and everything. So I'm like, oh, those guys are gonna, they're gonna tie Power Apps into CRM somehow. So that's interesting, but is that they're going to be their answer? And of course, as history shows, it was later at Extreme. Matt Barber gave a demo, and he gave a demo just purely on a regular Canvas-based Power App. And I thought, wow, if Matt Barber's excited about this, there is some momentum going on here.
So true, right?
And then of course we were, in January we were, given a private program, which I can talk about now because the NDA is lifted, and they were showing us what they're doing with the the Common Data Service and the Power Apps platform, and it was like, holy crap, Microsoft figured it out. And not only did they figure it out, they did it 10 times better than I would even imagine they would have. So, we were able to play with that. Those private previews, which of course we were begging and pleading to get on, and, we got attached to that. And when it was finally announced, I found the biggest thing was people were asking, like, well, really, what's this all about? And even on my own team at BDO, they're like, well, model-driven apps and Canvas-based apps, what does that all mean? I said, well, model-driven apps, we've been doing that for 10 years. Like, well, what do you mean? It's like, it's just CRM. It's field-informed configuration. And on the Power App side, I recently did some training, internal training on the Power Apps and the Canvas-based app and how that all set up. And right away, you could see these consultants, their eyes are lighting up. They're thinking of a dozen business problems that they previously struggled to solve before that they can solve now fairly easily. So that's, to me, is being part of the MVP program, to be part of that journey and to kind of get the heads up on that. And then immediately, once we were allowed to announce to the world, we were able to grab that ball. And there was a lot of great articles by a lot of the MVPs, like Yuka did a great rundown and everything, and a few others. That to me it's a great way that we as MVPs can kind of help the community, and in it personally as well is, also to bounce ideas off people. Working on a project that we, we as every other company built our own auto number solution. And looking at version 9, it's like, okay, auto numbers. It's Jonas has written a nice little interface on the XRM toolbox to update auto numbers, and I played around with it a little bit. I said, this should be a viable solution, but this is new. What are the gotchas? And I posted the message out on our MVP community and said, okay, has anybody else run into any issues, or what are the gotchas with the auto number? And Liza out of Australia, she said, well, we tried it, but we're having some problems on the portal using auto numbers. And Jonas kind of pitched in. He says, oh, it could be this and that. And I looked at it and like, oh, okay. And I played around with a few things. And the three of us, just even sending a few messages back and forth and collaborating, I thought, like, we were able to kind of, not only I kind of got a good feeling of how the new auto number worked. I think Jonas might have been able to make some updates to his tools around that, or at least he provided some feedback, and Eliza was able to, sort out her problem. And to me, it was like, we're effectively at the end of the day, we all kind of work for competitors, but we're all collaborating. We have a common problem and we're greater than the sum of our parts.
So tell me a bit about your other life, the powerlifting life, and I understand you've got a daughter, and even that your wife works in the dynamic space as well. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I'll talk a little bit about my family first, because they're a huge part of my life, and I love them to pieces. And so, yeah, I have one daughter. She's turning 10 next week, and yeah, I would basically say you become a parent just is a completely life-changing event. And it's awesome. Every day is an adventure. And my wife, it's quite interesting. She was actually trained in hotel and restaurant management. And it's funny, if you actually poll people that are working in the dynamics industry, I actually know about 4 or 5 that was their background for some weird, strange reason. There was another lady at BDO, I believe, one of the other folks in the UK who's very active in the community, used to work in that industry as well. So, so anyways, the long and short of it is my wife was, she was working for an organization kind of as a project manager. And she said, we're talking about work and things like that. She said, "Wow, what you do sounds really cool." And I said, "Thanks." But it was kind of funny for our wedding. Bridget built, and she kind of gets embarrassed when I tell this story. So here it is to the world. She built a Microsoft Access application that, kept track of all the people who were invited, the gifts we got, how many people responded, how many people there were yet to respond, their addresses, how many were returning with guests, without guests. And not only that, there was even a dashboard, there was some sort of bar chart on this stuff as well. And she even had logos and icons and everything. It was like, it's just sort of the whole wedding planning thing. How some people do a lot of, with the cards and everything. So she built this whole Access application. So of course, when she tells me, "Oh, what you do sounds really cool," I said, "Well, what you did in Access is effectively what I do, but using Dynamics CRM." And she goes, no, it was just an Access database. And I'm like, no, it's pretty much, not exactly the same, but it's the same concepts. So when I had my company, and this is when I was still an independent consultant, I was just myself, but I was getting a little overwhelmed. Like, if you're an independent, you're starting out, you don't say no to anything, right? Because you're like, I'm just going to take it on and do it, everything. So she was a little frustrated with her job, looking for a bit of a change. So I said, "Well, why don't you work with me and learn CRM?" And so, and not that I was half joking, but I didn't think she would really take me up on it, but she did, and got into developing SSRS reports, got into the configuration. She even did a little bit of JavaScript. And she was putting together some amazing systems. So, and she got into it, and now she's a business analyst. She's still with BDO, and a solution architect, and like she's amazing on the stuff that she does. Like I see, like she's showing me stuff in CRM sometimes. And like, how did you do that? Well, well, you're an MVP. You didn't know, kind of things. I'm building reports and things like that. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. And I'm very proud of her as well, the journey she's done and what she can do with the platform. And again, it goes to show that you don't need to have a university degree in computer science to become a Microsoft Dynamics 365 expert. And we even have MVPs that have no formal education in technology, or I believe Gus Gonzalez even mentioned there are a few that didn't even graduate high school that are MVPs. So it goes to show the power of this, not only the community for learning, but the platform and things like that not only are we solving business problems, we're offering, great careers to folks that, may, have accidentally fallen into this career.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. So good. Hey, listen, we're right on time. Pub trivia question. If, what's something that nobody knows about you, if the question was in a pub quiz, what would it be?
Nobody knows about me. Oh, wow.
What date were you born?
March 28th.
same day as Lady Gaga.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Did you know that? Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, there's a bit of trivia I found out.
There's some trivia for you right there. Wow.
Yeah. How about that? Hey, Nick, it's been great talking to you. And it's a bit funny because Nick's in a hotel room, the floor up from me, and I'm in the hotel room, the floor down, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, for sure. And then next time I can talk about the whole powerlifting thing.
Exactly.
That could be a whole podcast on its own.
That'll be great.
Sounds
cheers.
great, Mark. Okay,
Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave feedback on your favorite podcast app. Full show notes can be found on nz365guy.com/33. Hey, and I'll see you next Thursday.